It's time again for the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast with Dr. John Dentico. The mission of our podcast is to provide 21st century leadership training for a talent-driven world. We help organizations implement strategies and practices designed to attract, hire, engage, and retain top talent while mitigating the effects of burnout. Our guests are experts in various fields of organizational dynamics, including, but not limited to, leadership, management, communication, and coaching. They bring a world of knowledge and solutions to our viewers and listeners. I am sincerely grateful for their participation and ideas. So let's dive in. And if you enjoy our podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. We genuinely appreciate your support. Hello again and welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. John Dentico. With me today is Stephen Morris. Stephen Morris is a former U.S. Army combat veteran. His experience encompasses 21 years of service in both the military and in the corporate world. He has served with numerous leaders from both worlds who have been instrumental in forming his perspective on leadership and what it takes to lead. He created Renowned Leadership LLC to help people become authentic leaders with character and integrity, leaders that everyone wants to follow. I am pleased to have him here as a guest today on the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast with me. Hello, Stephen. How are you?
I am fantastic, brother. And let me say that hands down, that's the best introduction I've ever had. So I've done hundreds of podcasts, and that was the best. So,
I appreciate that very much.
You, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'll pass that along to my person who does that. Oh, I guess I have to pass that along to me. Anyway, so Stephen, let's begin. Let's jump in. What do you say? You have served in both in the military and in the corporate world. Can you tell me and my listeners and viewers what you have learned about leadership from your experiences?
I would say the biggest thing that I've learned, and this is probably the biggest roadblock I hit, is with clients anyway, is that for some reason civilians have it in their mind, and for most of my military career, or all of my military career, I believe the same thing, that it's different. If you're in the military, if you're in the civilian world, corporate world, leadership is different because military is structured and disciplined and yada, yada, all that crap. But it's not. It's the exact same thing. The language changes, yes. The people you're talking to changes, yes. But the actual core values of what a leader actually is, none of that changes. You're still leading people. You're still communicating to people. You're still trying to change people's lives for the better. So I would say that's the biggest lesson I learned transitioning from one to the other, is it's all the exact same, and it communicates very well one to the other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do. Well, I think we've talked about this in the workup to the podcast today, and there is this, I suspect, I don't know how true it is, but I suspect that many people in the corporate world look at leaders in the military world as only running around barking orders to people. Simon says do this, Simon says do that kind of a thing. They just bark orders all the time, which is the farthest thing from the truth. It's just not that way. But I'm glad you pointed it out, because oddly enough, you answered the second question, and that is, what are the differences, and had you noticed any differences? So let's move on to the next question. And that is, can you give me an example from the past in your life, without naming names, on how you applied your notion of leadership to a real issue facing you and the organization you were with at the time?
Man, what a loaded question. I got to think. And just for clarity, I don't have these questions. So I had no idea I was answering the second question. With that being said, I need a second to think. So ask me again. What was that question? You can give me the short version of it.
I'll give you the short version. I want you to talk about something in your personal life, in your experiences, where you took your concept of leadership, your idea of what leadership is, and applied it to an organization, to the problem that that you were facing at the time, whatever that particular issue was.
So
Tell me what you
we're
did and what the outcome was.
we're going to go smaller, because one of the form that you have your guests filled out, one of the questions you ask was, what is my own definition of what a leader actually is? And I don't remember exactly what I said, because I didn't answer it from a script. I just answered it from my head there on the spot. But something to do along the lines of, a leader is about people. The leader's sole job is to create and prepare his people, her people, for wherever they are going to go in their lives. And my example is, I was working for this company. This was the only company I've worked for outside of the army. And I had this employee, and he had bounced around from area to area. He was just a troubled employee. Nobody could get him to function at full capacity, if you will. He was a rock star when it came to his actual job. He just wasn't fitting in with the culture, basically, of the company, and some other stuff, just disciplinary issues. And so he came to me, last ditch resort. If he didn't work out for me, he wasn't going to work out in the company. And after 6 months of working with me, he went on to the manager development program. Now, that's not credit to me. That's 100% credit to him. The literally only thing I did is I changed how I communicated with him. See, everybody else was trying to communicate how they receive. And one of the most important lessons, my platoon sergeant taught me this: whenever you're trying to communicate something, if the person you're communicating to isn't picking up what you're putting down, that's not on them. That's on you. You got to go to the receiver's level of to communicate, so that they understand you. As the communicator, that's your responsibility. And that's literally all I did. I just changed the way I communicated, so that I went to his level of communication, and it literally changed his life. He was more fulfilled at work. He was happier at work. He was more engaged at work. It literally changed all those disciplinary issues he was having, because somebody just got him. Somebody understood him. Somebody was communicating with him in a way that he understood. And it literally only took 6 months to turn this guy that was about to get fired into a manager in the manager development training program. That to me is 100% what leadership is. It's figuring out how people tick, going to their level of where they tick, and then elevating them so that they can achieve their full potential.
Very good point. Yeah, I've always felt that one of the key ways that it was necessary for me to connect with an individual was making sure that they understood why something was happening or why
Mm-hmm.
something was going on. We are a WHY driven species. We love to know why. And a lot of times, hopefully, I thought it was getting less, but I don't think it's getting less. It may be in some areas, but we still tell people what we want them to do, and we don't ever sit down and say, let me tell you why we're doing this, why it has to happen. Because people normally go off and maybe they don't agree, but they get it. They understand what's going on. So I think the
Mm-hmm.
why is an incredibly valuable way to open the door to better communication. Any reflection on that?
Yeah, when you think about it, John, what is sales? Do we ever buy things like, when you go buy a new car, is that usually logical, or is it emotional? When we buy stuff from the emotional side of our brain, that is what Pepsi, Coke, Nike, Amazon, that's what everybody that sells stuff understands, is the human species buys off of emotion, not logic, most of the time. So with that being said, how can you sell your mission, vision, and values if you aren't explaining the why to them, if you aren't getting them emotionally invested? And how can you be emotionally invested if you don't understand freaking why? Now, I have a great story for that, just to drive this example home, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
I think I was flying back from Iraq, And I was by myself. I wasn't returning with my unit or anything like that. I was flying with another unit that I don't even remember who they were. But this particular unit, they had been operating, I believe, in southern Iraq. And from what I gathered, it was a very bloody deployment for them. They lost a lot of people. It was very hard. It was a lot of fighting. And they were going home permanently, and their morale sucked. And so we get on this plane. I'm sitting next to the person that I'm sitting next to, and I'm like, dude, what is going on with your unit, man? Why is everybody so depressed? Like, you're going home. And he was like, man, I don't know. It's just a hard year. And then their commander gets up in front of the entire plane, and he has this PowerPoint that he shares with on the plane, explaining to everybody the effect they had on the theater of war that entire 13 months they were there. And basically, what happened was the entire 13 months that this unit was deployed in southern Iraq, IED attacks dropped by 70%. That's insane. After the commander got done with his presentation, the dude I was talking to previously looked at me and goes, that would have been good to know 6 months ago. And it clicked in my head as, holy crap, this is why they're so depressed, because they had no idea why they were fighting, why they were bleeding, why they were dying. They had no idea. It was that information was reserved for the higher ups. And so their morale just took this beating. Yeah, you got to be able to emotionally sell whatever it is you're doing. If you want that level of engagement, if you want that level of buy-in, all that stuff comes from the emotional side. You got to explain why.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And the rule has always been in sales, as far as I understand, is the first thing that people buy is you. They
Mm-hmm.
buy the person who connects with them. The second is the product or service, and third is the company. So that's the way I remember it. But I'm pretty sure I know it's the first thing they connect with is the person who humanizes, if you will, the sale, humanizes whatever the product is. And I think that's so important, not only in sales per se, but also in communicating what the purpose of the organization is and where people are going. I think you and I had this conversation previously, and I'll just reflect on it. I believe wholeheartedly in the idea of a statement of purpose, or what we refer to as a mission statement, right? And not the mission statement that you hang on the wall and you show everybody when they come in, that's maybe 4 paragraphs long or 3 paragraphs long, covers every basis. Go into a crap table and put money on every number. Let's just do that. Guess what? You're going to lose money. It's just as simple as that. But you have to have, and I believe, a one sentence statement that everybody identifies with, that everybody says, this is who we are, and this is what we do, and this is why we do it. And I think that is so powerful because it aligns everybody together. Any reflection on that?
Yeah. And yeah, we did talk about this. And I actually use your example. I've used it several times since we've talked I can't remember, I think it was a destroyer from World War II you got stationed on, and you read the mission statement, and it was, you're going to go here, you're going to find the enemy, you're going to engage the enemy, you're going to kill the enemy. And that was, oh, there you go. That's your mission statement. And it's so powerful, right? Because it's so much easier to buy something. We go back to sales, right? What is the number one lesson in sales? You never confuse the buyer. If a confused buyer is never going to buy. So if you hand me a 13-page mission statement, it's just going to confuse. How am I supposed to buy that? I can't memorize it. I can't nothing. Yeah, absolutely. The most effective mission statements are always going to just be short, concise, to the point. It's going to tell you exactly what your purpose is. It's going to tell you exactly why you're doing what you're doing. It's going to tell you exactly the values that you're bringing to the table by doing the purpose and the why. And then all of a sudden it's okay. I am making this widget to go in this thing So a great example, there's a company close to me. They make the refrigerators for hospitals, and they're the number one supplier of medical grade refrigerators, whatever that is, right? When you go talk to those people, they're so proud of the work they do because they literally know the work they do saves lives or helps save lives. And so those are people that know exactly what their mission is. They know exactly they're making this tiny little widget to go in this giant refrigerator that's going to go sit in a hospital that's going to store penicillin so that penicillin can go into a human being and save their life. Right? That is the power of having that one or two sentence mission statement, just short, concise, powerful, so that you can really drive it home and get that buy-in from your people.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. There's a story, I believe it to be true. I have not watched the movie Oppenheimer, and I intend to do that. I haven't seen it yet.
I
But
haven't either.
there's a story that comes out of the Manhattan Project
Mhm.
whereby Oppenheimer was trying to everything. They had a group of mathematicians that did a lot of the calculations, and everything was compartmented, meaning people were separate. They knew they were working on particular formulas, but they had no idea why. And their productivity was low. It was just not where they needed the productivity to be. And there was a great resistance from telling them the truth about what they were doing. And apparently, Oppenheimer got everybody in a room and said, "Let me tell you what we're doing and why we're doing it." And it was about building the bomb. And when they went back to work, the productivity skyrocketed. It skyrocketed because everybody was now vested in the why. I have talked to previous guests about this idea of purpose, how important purpose is, focused purpose. And just like you said, it doesn't matter. If you're making specialized hospital refrigerators, everybody's united on that purpose. If they work for the company, the company's communicating well with their people, caring for their people, everybody's focused. Everybody knows what they're doing and why they're there. And I can't, and guests after guest have told me how important it is for people to have a sense of purpose about what they do every single day. And hopefully, somewhere in there, have a sense of personal purpose. What is my purpose here on the planet? It's a very powerful, very interesting perspective. And I believe in it completely. I believe that you have to have a sense of purpose about your life. You may not know it right away, and you may not know it when you're building refrigerators, but eventually you'll find it, I think, as you are engaged in good work. Let me ask you this question as we move along. Do you think leadership ideas or perspectives have changed as a result of the COVID pandemic? If so, how have they changed? And what can people do to make the change to a new idea or model of leadership? How do they, in a sense, make the switch?
Man, this is a loaded question. So I will do my best to answer it without offending people. Leadership, and I built my company off three principles: community, consistency, and clarity. And I explained to you last time we talked the reason for that, because when I went and researched all the great elite warriors of the past, Vikings, Spartans, the Roman legions, that's the one thing they all had in common is they were solely focused on their community. They were crystal clear on what they were doing. They're always communicating. They're consistent in all their actions. And you look at professional sports teams, the champions, they value those things as well. And so, fast forward to just past the Industrial Revolution and 1950s, 1960s. That's when we started getting this mindset of managers, and that's when it went to personal is personal, professional is professional. They don't mix. Keep your personal life at home, keep your professional life at work. Which that whole concept blows my mind. Like, how is that even humanly possible? If my dad dies, I can't go to work the next day and be fully functioning. I'm sorry. I'm going to be down. Fast forward to 2020, COVID happened. All of a sudden, people realized, wait a minute, the way we've been doing things for the past almost century that's not the only way to do things, especially not in today's technology. So people aren't solely sold to stay in, at this job for the next 30 years or whatever, for the benefits or for the pay or whatever, because they can just go get a new job now. So what that did was it forced leaders to start taking a look at, okay, so now we're having to lead teams remotely, completely different challenge than when you're doing it in person. And now people are starting to get ticked off about the way they're being treated. They're starting to get ticked off about these things, and they're just leaving in droves. And that's why we had the Great Resignation, or whatever they call it. Long story to say, yes, leadership is changing. It is currently changing. It's going back to where leaders, especially small companies or mid-sized companies, are being forced to recognize their employees as human beings rather than just look at them as another resource, another cog in their wheel. Larger companies, I don't really have a good thumb on what, or on the pulse of what's going on with them. I assume not, because they got so much money they don't care. But the smaller companies and the mid-sized companies, they really have to focus on that human piece now, because people realize, wait a minute, life can be completely different if we choose for it to be. And people are making that choice, of course.
You're right. People are saying, I had Steve, I'll get his name in a minute. He was a guest on my, Stephen Howard, that's who it was. Stephen Howard, a guest on my show, wrote 22 books on leadership and management. And he told me the story of two executives that had been given jobs. The onboarding process was not very good. They got there and they're working for a few weeks and realized that it just wasn't working for them, and they just quit. They just said, we don't have to do this. We're not doing this, and we're not just here for a paycheck. Bingo. We're not here for just a paycheck.
Right.
And they didn't have anything in the door yet. I said, that's all right. We'll go figure it out. And people are just less likely to put up with this kind of factory, if you will, industrial factory mindset. You're a cog in the wheel. And no, I'm a human being. And things have to matter to me. I have to matter to the company, and the company has to matter to me. I always talk about values alignment, involvement in the decision-making processes, and training and learning. That's what they want. That's what people today want, so they can advance. And without providing them the great motivator, the greatest motivation, meaning where I'm not motivating them, but they're motivated internally because I'm giving them the opportunity to find purpose in the things that we do every day. So to me, you're right on the money. I think there is this shift, more networking. We're going to much more of an influence relationship. People are in an influence relationship. So we'll see where that washes itself out. And of course, there are companies who still want to express a great level of control and are saying you have to come back to the brick and mortar place. Some will come. I'm sure of it. And many will say, I don't think so. I'll go find something else. So it's very interesting to see how it may work itself all out. I want to ask you this question. A lot of my previous guests have spoken to the need for a leader to be vulnerable. Okay. Do you think leaders must own up to when they make a mistake? Why do you think this is an important aspect of a leader's abilities?
So, one, absolutely. And two, in order to get the most out of your people as a leader, they have to fully trust you, right? Look at SEAL Team 6. Would SEAL Team 6 be SEAL Team 6 if they didn't trust each other?
Never happened.
It never happened, right?
Never happened.
They'd just be some schmucks at a paintball facility, right? Like they wouldn't even be professional soldiers at that point. Trust is the single most important thing that a leader can have, right? So tell me, how can you have trust? How can I trust you if John is my leader? How can I trust John if I watch him make a mistake and yet he doesn't own it? Or how can I trust that it's okay for me to make a mistake if I don't see my leader and see, that's the problem, is we look at making mistakes as they're like this grandiose, horrible, like worst thing ever. Not, but you ask any successful person, Elon Musk, Will Smith, like Harrison Ford, Denzel Washington, all these people, they're going to tell the exact same, they use the exact same words for almost verbatim. I hope you fail fast. I hope you fail often. Because failing, making mistakes, that is what gets you from point A to point B. That's what makes you so much better when you get to point B, that you're able to keep going to point C, D, E, F, G, all the way down. But without the leader owning those mistakes, they're not going to create an environment where it's safe for their team members, their employees, whoever, whatever you want to call them, their people. It's not going to be a safe environment for them to feel safe to make mistakes, which is going to stunt their growth.
I absolutely agree. 2 points I'd like to come back with. Number one, if you own a mistake, okay, if you own it, then you have an opportunity to do something about it. If you never own a problem, or you never own a mistake, and everything, you've seen this, everybody is doing something to me. I'll say it, the victim mindset. Okay. I am not in control of my own life. People are doing it to me. Then you don't own it. And if you don't own it, you can't make any changes. I've seen this up close and personal. To be perfectly frank about it, my dad was a guy just like that. Never owned anything. You know what I mean? It was always somebody doing something to him. Therefore, he could never change it. Never wanted to change it. Eventually, at the latter part of his life, he did. Okay, when he came to the realization, when he had to face up to it. So, in many respects, that's important. If you own it, you, as you say, you show that human side. And any time that I've made a mistake in my past, when I was either in the military or in business, and I said, I really screwed that up. I don't know how I did that. It was a really good job of screwing that up. People get rallied around me,
Yeah.
and they said, hey, don't worry about it. You got an idea how you're going to fix it? Yeah, I know I'm going to fix it. This is what I'm going to do. Yeah, let's go do it. And there was this connection, this gathering, if you will, of support. And I think it's very important. The second thing I want to talk about is this notion of mutual trust. You talked about the SEALs. One of the greatest military strategists of our time was a guy named John Boyd. And Boyd did this incredible study on military history where he found out that the single, the question was, what does it take to win? And how did armies inferior in numbers and technology beat armies superior to them? And the number one answer is mutual trust. They had greater levels of mutual trust. So it wasn't that they trusted the leader per se, which they did, and the leader trusted them, but that everyone in the group trusted one another. So that there's this old Navy saying that a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So that was the thing there, that everybody was lifted together. So I think that's very important, and I appreciate you bringing those points out. Yeah, it's important. Trust. Gotta have trust. You don't have trust, you don't have anything. Getting down to the last question, let me ask you my magic question about the magic wand. Okay, and that is, if you could change anything and you had a magic wand, what would it be, and why did you choose that?
I don't, you asked me this on that forum, and I don't remember what I said again, but I'm going to change my answer to whatever it was. If I had a magic wand and could change anything, it would be people's mindset. Actually, no, I think this is going to be close. So never mind. It would be people's mindset towards leadership, because I tell, and I get in arguments with people about this all the time, because I say everybody is a leader. And they're like, no, I'm not a leader. I just go to work, get told what to do, blah, 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 live my life. I lead no one. That's not true. That's not true at all. Number one, before John can lead Stephen, John has to be able to lead John's self. If you can't lead yourself, you can't lead other people. So you're at least a leader of one, but chances are you probably got a friend that looks up to you or a family member that looks up to you, someone that follows you, your kids, your wife, your husband, who knows? I would change the mindset that I'm not a leader. I want everyone to wake up, look in the mirror, and go, I am at least the leader of one. I at least lead myself, and take pride in that leadership because that is so freaking important. Like I said, if you can't lead yourself, you can't lead anyone. If you want the world around you to change, learn how to lead yourself.
Good point. Yeah, I think it's important. And I treat leadership, part of the idea is it's a come as you are party, in the sense that you don't have to be perfect to do leadership. We talk about self awareness, it's good. We talk about authenticity, it's good. But there was a woman named Margaret Wheatley who wrote a book called Leadership in the New Science some years ago, I think over 25 years ago. And there's one line in the book that I really liked. And she said, you only know yourself in relation to other people. In a sense, jump in and learn from your mistakes, learn to be a leader through the things that you do, because in a sense, that's a reflection that will teach you how to be a leader, that will teach you how to be self-sufficient, and in a sense, how to lead. So I think that here's the problem. If people are waiting to be some level of, and I kid about this all the time, nirvanic, transcendental level of knowledge that a person has to have, the shining light coming through on their heads before they can be a leader. No, you get involved, do something, be there, whether it's in a business or a volunteer activity. Learn from the things that you do, because I do believe in many respects we become what we do. And but be open to learning, be open to making mistakes, and just not go down there, this is the way it's going to be, and I don't care what anybody else says. No, you have to be receptive to the changes and to the things that you do. So
Can I throw out one more thought? I know we're
sure,
running
go
out
right
of
ahead.
time,
No,
but
go right ahead.
you bring that up, and one of my favorite examples to this is Dr. Martin Luther King. Do you think, if we could go back and ask him, do you think he wanted that burden of the civil rights movement to be on his shoulders? Do you think he woke up one day and you're like, you know what? This will be awesome. I highly doubt it. I bet if he could go back, like if he could change everything, magic wand it, he would make it so everything was just gravy and he didn't have to go through all that. He didn't wake up just wanting that. George Washington, do you think he wanted the entire weight of the revolution on his shoulders? He didn't even know how to be a general. Most people don't realize he wasn't actually that good of a general in the beginning. He lost more battles than he won. He just won the most important ones. Good on him. But do you think these people wanted that responsibility? My point is, going back to what I was saying and tying it into with what you were saying, that's what changes the world. When you wake up, you accept a personal accountability, you look at everything going on and you go, that's not right. I'm going to at least make the change in my life to affect that so it doesn't affect me so heavily, or whatever the case may be. But it's when you consciously wake up and you're like, I'm going to take control of at least me and change something about it.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to say.
No, I appreciate that. I certainly don't know what was in the mind of Washington or Dr. King, but you know what it brings to mind when you say that is the incredible people who have been awarded the Medal of Honor. You sit back and you say, did any one of them ever go out and say, today I'm going to win a Medal of Honor? No.
I can promise.
No. The burden was put upon them, and they rose to the occasion. They were not perfect people. Most of them, if not all of them, hated to be thought of as a hero.
Mm-hmm.
And they just went out and did the job that was in front of them. It's a very interesting point. Do what you can do. You know,
Mhm.
some days I like to say, some days you gain a foot, some days you gain a half an inch. Some days you're struggling to hang in there. People say, take it day by day. I can tell you from personal experience, sometimes the best you get is maybe the next 10 minutes. And it's
Yeah.
10 minutes after 10 minutes. So you're in the real dig in mode, as I say. You've dug in,
Mhm.
you're going to endure. And the question is holding out until things change, and they do eventually change. So
Mhm.
I appreciate those comments. Anyway, Stephen, thank you so very much for being here today. I truly appreciate it. And it was a great conversation. And I wish you all the success in the future, the best of everything. And again, thank you for being on the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast.
It was my pleasure, brother. Absolutely.
Take care.